Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Cena Nerd Presents Blerd Trek, Last Week in Star Trek. I'm your host, Will. Now, it's no secret that Star Trek Deep Space Nine is my all-time favorite Star Trek series. So when I tell you that the latest episode of Starfleet Academy had me getting emotional, it's because it hit on a deeply personal level to me and my love for Deep Space Nine. So some stories never really end, do they? They stick with us and become a part of a legacy that we pass down. And for many of us, the story of Benjamin Sisko, the emissary of the Prophet's debate, was one of those. It was a story about a father, a captain, and a figure of faith. And now, at Starfleet Academy, a new story that echoes the past in the most amazing ways is coming to fruition. A holographic cadet is walking in the footsteps of a giant, holding up a mirror of one of Starfleet's most complicated and moving legacies. This isn't just a tribute, it's a conversation across centuries. So, on the surface, Starfleet Academy's 5th episode, Acclimation Mil, seems like a lot of fun, character-focused hour about the Academy's first photonic cadet, Sam. But underneath that bubbly exterior is a profound and beautifully crafted love letter to Star Trek Deep Space Nine. For longtime fans like me and many others, it's an absolute treasure trove of callbacks and emotional payoffs. Now, quick spoiler alert for those casual fans or folks who've never watched the series. There are definitely going to be some Easter eggs and references that may be missed, and I'll get into some of those story moments in this review. So if you haven't watched it, I do want you to go into this knowing that there are going to be spoilers. But on a bigger point, hopefully Sam's journey as emissary still resonates with you. Now, this episode, written by Kristen Beyer and Lower Deck's own Tawny Newsome, who is a huge Deep Space Nine fan, had the main goal of bringing the show of Deep Space Nine's legacy into the 32nd century, and it did so in a big way. And it also pulls off something that's very incredible. It uses a new character's journey to wrap up the emotional stories of characters we've loved for decades, all the while digging into what legacy even means. Now, the setup for this episode is pretty simple. Sam, whose name is short for Series Acclimation Mil, is a holographic emissary. Her creators, a shy photonic species from the planet Kask, sent her to study and report back on what it means to live with organic beings. These makers, who evolved from servants into their own physical species, are very suspicious of physical life. They pressure Sam to skip all the distracted friends, hobbies, even learning the theorem, and just focus on her mission. To prove that she's worthy and not get kicked out of the academy. They demand that she gets into a tough course called Confronting the Unexplainable. Now, this possible task is what sends her right into the past. While researching, she stumbles upon the story of another emissary from centuries ago, a man by the name of Captain Benjamin Sisko, the emissary of the Prophets of Bajor. This is really the heart of the episode. To get what Sam is going through, we have to revisit the difficult, messy, and beautiful path of the man she's mirroring. Series Acclimation Mil argues that the best homage isn't just retelling a story, but living its lessons and carrying its burdens, finding yourself in its shadows. So let's first start to the whole emissary's burden. The whole concept of an emissary started in Deep Space Nine, and that legacy and the concept was a tangled mess. It was a title, a prophecy, and a huge weight on one man's shoulders. For Benjamin Sisko, it was never a job. When the board's spiritual leader, Kaiopaka, first met him and called him the emissary in the pilot, he was just a Starfleet officer who was a grieving husband who lost his wife in the massacre at Wolf 359. He was a single dad who trying to make a life on a beat-up space station, and he was a man believed in what he could see and touch. The prophets, the so-called gods of Bajor, were just wormhole aliens to him. Their non-linear view of time was a scientific puzzle. not a spiritual truth. Now, Sisko's early days as emissary were all about him pushing back. He saw the title as a political tool to help keep Bajor stable and eventually join the Federation. Talking to the prophets were just a very frustrating and weird task, and it felt like it kept getting in the way of his real job. They didn't get grief, they didn't get fatherhood, and they definitely didn't get about why one moment had to come after another. His early story was the constant tug of war between the man of science and the man of faith. He ran from a destiny that was dropped right in front of him. It took years of seeing explainable things while witnessing real faith from Kira and other people he came across throughout his journeys on Beat, into helping him finally accepting that part of him was connected to these aliens before he started to put those two identities together. Now, his Acclimation Mil mirrors this conflict perfectly with Sam. She too is an emissary, sent by her non-linear creators to connect with the linear organic life at Starfleet Academy. Her makers, a lot like the prophets in those early episodes of Deep Space Nine and the chats that they had with Sisko throughout the series, are impatient, and they just don't get what it means to be human. They see her making friends, having fun, and even getting into a bar fight with the War College cadets as just glitches in her programming. They want data and reports, completely missing that the messy experiences they want her to avoid are the data that they're looking for. Her talks with her creators feel just like those bizarre, disjointed conversations Sisko had with the prophets. These beings who can't grasp simple things like love, desire, or community. Where Sisko had to explain linear time and loss, Sam had to explain why organic messiness has value. The episodes her struggle up as almost a direct parallel to Sisko's about being a being who is caught trying to represent one reality to another. Caught between the demands of her being a prophet and the life that she's trying to build for herself. This is her emissary's burden. She's ordered to observe, but her life at the Academy forces her to participate. The episode suggests that being an emissary means being stuck in a trap, forced to bring two worlds together, often at great personal cost. Sam's hesitation to challenge her makers is just like Sisko's refusal to accept his role, and her journey to find her own voice starts by studying how he navigated his. So now I'm going to use an episode from Deep Space Nine to really highlight how this really gets things as far as being an emissary, and that is the episode in the Pale Moonlight, which is, to me, no single hour has ever picked apart the moral compromises of leadership as honest as that episode in Deep Space Nine. It's a defining moment for the franchise, a raw confession from a good man who realizes to save his world, he had to trade away a piece of his soul. In that episode, Sisko is desperate to get the Romulans to join the war against the Dominion. So he schemes with this slippery Cardassian Garrick and Sisko has to lie, he has to bribe people, obstruct justice, and he becomes an accessory to murder. Now, the final scene in that episode where Sisko is looking right at the camera and listing his sins and ends with a chilling defense of all of what he's done with the simple words, "I can live with it," is a thesis for the whole show. It says that in the real world, the line between right and wrong many times gets blurry. Victory does have a price, and real leadership means making impossible choices and carrying the weight of those choices forever. And this episode completely shattered the image of a Starfleet, the perfect image of a Starfleet captain. It showed that morality can be a luxury when you're facing extinction, and Sisko's choice wasn't celebrated. It was a private hell, a necessary evil that he had to bear alone. This willingness to get his hands dirty, to work in the shades of gray, is what defined his command style. It's a grit that makes him different from other captains, but it's a realism that he had that was born out of the front lines of a horrible war with the Dominion. Now, series Acclimation Mil gets this part of Sisko's journey and character and cleverly weaves it into Sam's journey. She isn't facing a quadrant-wide war, thankfully, but she does face her own no-win scenario. Her deep dive into Sisko's life isn't just about his role as a spiritual icon, It's about understanding the tough, sometimes ugly decisions he had to make as a commander. And we see this play out after her friends write a program that lets her experience being drunk, which is a very funny scene. But as she starts a brawl with cadets from the rival war college, on one level, it's just a kid acting out. But thematically, it's Sam's first taste of Sisko's style of confrontation. It's messy, it's impulsive, and it comes from a desire to stand her ground. After getting kicked out by the doctor, she tells him that she wanted to walk in Captain Sisko's footsteps, showing that she is learning that the emissary wasn't just a man of peace, he was a man of action also, who never shied away from a fight. Now, this episode pushes that even further. It gets that being like Sisko means claiming your own power, even against a higher authority. After studying Sisko's entire life, his willingness to challenge the prophets, his moral compromises, his fierce independence, Sam has her own in the pale moonlight moment. It's not a conspiracy, it's a declaration. She confronts her makers, the photonic beings who's been controlling her every move, and she tells them that their demands are ridiculous. She declares that she'll finish her own mission and she'll do it her way. It's the biggest lesson that she learns from Sisko's legacy. True service isn't blind obedience. It's taking responsibility for the mission and making the hard calls, even if it means defying your gods. Just as Sisko had to decide what price was worth paying for the Alpha Quadrant, Sam has to decide what it means to be an individual while still serving her people. Her conclusion that she can and must do is a direct echo of Sisko's famous line, "I can live with it." Now, Deep Space Nine was never afraid of asking hard questions, and this episode definitely carries the tradition. Fans still, to this day, argue about Sisko's choices. Was he right in the pale moonlight? If you haven't watched that episode, go watch it. But if you have watched it, or if you've watched other episodes of Deep Space Nine, tell me what you think are moments that define his character for you. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And these conversations that fans have to this day are what keeps that show's legacy alive. And if you're enjoying this review, think about hitting that like button and subscribing for more breakdowns of how Star Trek honors its past while forging new stories in Starfleet Academy. Now, let's turn to another episode of Deep Space Nine that I think also really captures the Sisko very, very well. And that is the episode Far Beyond the Stars. Of all the incredible episodes of Deep Space Nine, Far Beyond the Stars might be the most personal, meta, and important one. In it, Sisko gets a vision from the prophets, where he's Benny Russell's, a science fiction writer in the 1950s America. Benny dreams of a future on a space station led by a black man named Benjamin Sisko. But his editor rejects the story because the world isn't ready for a black hero. The episode is a raw, honest look at the pain of racism and the power of a dream. It's about Avery Brooks, who also directed it, pouring his soul on screen, breaking the fourth wall to show us that the fight for representation in the 24th century started in his own reality. Now, this episode made it clear that Benjamin wasn't just a Starfleet captain. He was a black man, a father, and a symbol. His identity woven into his role. And Avery Brooks' performance was groundbreaking. He was the first black lead of a Star Trek series, and he brought a cultural richness to that character. And we see that cultural richness in Sisko, in that he had that love for Creole cooking, which they referenced in this episode. His New Orleans family, his complicated relationship with his own father, that made Sisko feel so real. Sisko's legacy can't be separated from the legacy of the actor Avery Brooks himself. He's an actor, he was a director, he was a teacher who brought so much intelligence and weight to the role. Brooks, now retired from acting, has left a permanent mark on the franchise and on television. So, series Acclimation Mil pays its most touching tribute there by moving past Sisko the emissary to explore Benjamin Sisko the man. As Sam goes deeper, she starts to question her own identity beyond her program. She wants to understand the man behind the myth, and the episode gives her that through two shocking and powerful cameos. First, Sam finds a holographic recording of adult Jake Sisko, played again by Sirach Lofton. For years, fans have wondered about Jake, the boy left standing there on the promenade, waiting for his father to come home. Here, we get an answer, and it's a beautiful moment that honors a key concern about Avery Brooks when Deep Space Nine ended. And he felt that it was vital that Benjamin Sisko, as a black man, not become just another statistic of an absentee father. And this episode directly addresses that by having Jake confirm his father never truly left. He was there for it all the important moments in his life, even after his ascension. The recording shows that Jake became a successful author and a father himself, living a full life inspired by his dad's example. And for me, as also someone who's lost their own father 5 years ago, hearing that a son still felt his father's presence throughout his life was an incredibly resonant. It's the heartbreaking and beautiful moment, made even more powerful by Lofton's real-life friendship with Avery Brooks. And if you've ever seen any interviews with Sirach, you will see the profound impact that their friendship and relationship has throughout the series and all these years later. Sam's professor, who we only knew as Professor Ilya, is revealed to be Ilya Dax, the new Cardassian host of the Dax symbiont, played by the episode's co-writer, Tani Newsom. Now, the Dax symbiont has known Sisko through Curzon, Jadzia, and Ezri as the host. And this character now acts as a bridge across 800 years. Ilya talks about Sisko's love for people who just got into trouble for the right reasons. And that's just the perfect way to describe him. This reveal is a stunning connection to the past, reminding us of Sisko's deep friendships and the found family he had built on that station. Through Jake and Dax, Sam learns that Sisko's true legacy isn't just a celestial temple. It's the people he loved and the lives he changed. She learns his identity as a father and as a friend were just as important as his role as the emissary to the prophets. So as we come to a conclusion here, the ending of Deep Space Nine and the finale episode, What You Leave Behind, definitely was a bittersweet one. And for many, it left many questions. Sisko does fulfill his role and his destiny by defeating Gul Dukat, but he's pulled into the Celestial Temple to live with the prophets. He tells a heartbroken Cassidy Yates that he'll be back, maybe in a year, maybe yesterday. Cassidy was his wife. But for more than 2 decades, that promise has just been hanging there. A beautiful but unfinished piece of music. That question of what happened to Benjamin Sisko became part of the show's own legend. And Series Acclimation accepts that question to some degree, but instead it offers something much deeper: acceptance. Through her journey, Sam learns that solving the mystery of Sisko's disappearance isn't the search itself is what matters. And learning about his life, his burdens, and his identity, she finds the strength to define her own. She realizes that being an emissary doesn't mean she has to be a perfect copy of Sisko. She can forge her own path, inspired by his legacy, and not be trapped by it. And I think that's something that Star Trek as a whole is learning in Starfleet Academy. And to me, this is the most respectful homage that the show can possibly pay. It's not about bringing Sisko back. It's about making sure his story keeps inspiring new ones. The episode's final moments are a true masterclass at hitting you right in the heart. After giving Sam a copy of Jake's secretly finished book, Anselm, Ilya Dax provides the last piece of the puzzle. And then we hear him. Not a new recording, but an archived audio woven perfectly into the scene with the blessing of retired actor Avery Brooks, secured through Sirach Lofton's efforts. The show uses a spoken word poem from Brooks' 2006 album, and as Sam accepts her new path, we hear Sisko's voice, Avery Brooks' voice, for the first time in Star Trek in over 25 years. And the quote is this from the poem, quote, "Divine laws are simpler than human ones, which is why it takes a lifetime to be able to understand them. Only love can understand them. Only love can interpret these words as they were meant to be interpreted." Those words aren't just about the prophets, though they're the final thought on Sisko's entire journey and the main theme of this episode. It was love for his son, his crew, his people that guided his toughest choices. And as the music swells, into the iconic Deep Space Nine theme. A simple title card appears. Thank you, Avery. In that moment, Starfleet Academy becomes something more. It becomes a direct message of thanks from a new generation of storytellers to a man who changed the game. It's a touching, meta, and deeply nostalgic goodbye, not just to a character, but to an actor and to an incredible legacy they built to get together. The story of Benjamin Sisko may be over, but his spirit, it seems, lives on. And to me, that, in closing, that is a powerful way to honor a legacy. For a lifelong Deep Space Nine fan, this episode felt like coming home. It makes you really want to go back and rewatch the series from the beginning, just to live in that world again. And for new viewers of Star Trek, I hope it makes you want to go back and watch that series as well. It's proof that some stories are truly timeless. So thank you so much for watching this episode of Blerd Trek. Please like, subscribe, and comment, and as always, live long and prosper.